Mama, I got bad news, bad news. I've been rolling with some bad dudes, bad dudes. I've been trying to get a bag too.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Ashes to Awesome podcast, Rising in Recovery. Our podcast provides light, hope, and understanding about addiction and mental health to those living within that life and the people who love them. This episode is brought to you by Together We Can, where Canada recovers from addiction. That's twcrecoverylife.org. Hello, listeners. Welcome to another edition of the Ashes to Awesome podcast. I am sitting in virtual studio with Mike Loughman from Airdrie, Alberta. How are you doing today, Mike?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming on. We've had this booked in now for, well, over a month anyway, right? I guess it's been.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Anxiously waiting.
Yeah, KTA, Carl the Atheist, who also lives out in Airdrie, hooked up the two of us, and I'm glad that he did. So, hey, listen, Mike, let's just get right into your story. There's a few things we want to talk about, but, it always starts with, well, where it starts, right? So take us back to the first time you tried a substance.
Okay, well, a little bit vague or like blurry, but I remember, being around 15-ish, like you start sneaking booze, right? So like definitely booze was my first drug of any kind. Like the dad sneaking you sips of beer when you're 12, 13, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But then when you're 15 and, I was a skater, I got picked on and beat up all the time. So I started hanging out with kind of the bad kids, the ones that they made me steal and shit for me to hang out with them. But they're the ones who got me into, drinking, or we'd sneak or like get someone to boot for us, get some, 40 in Old English, whatever, start pounding those back. So there's those. And then that got me into smoking marijuana. Mm-hmm. So started smoking marijuana. And then that was like, I liked it a lot.
Okay,
I don't know why.
I'm going to stop you there, Mike, and I always ask this at the beginning of the show. That first time you tried it, or the first time you remember trying it, do you remember how it made you feel? Whether it was pot or booze or whatever. The first time you kind of got that escape, I guess, right?
Well, yeah, definitely an escape for sure. It got rid of all my inhibitions. I became my confidence, basically. I was always afraid of what people thought of me, and I was scared to say or do things. But with alcohol, I was like, I could do what I want, say what I want, and I wasn't scared to voice my opinion. And I wasn't scared to talk to girls. I wasn't, it was just more like liquid courage to me. And then the marijuana was just funny and chillaxing, and just having fun with the homies. But then, then the addiction kicks in, like the alcohol became a huge problem. But then, like, I always say that alcohol is the gateway drug. I don't think marijuana is a gateway. I mean, it can be, anything could be a gateway drug, really, because some people start straight into opioids or whatever. But like, to me, alcohol is the biggest gateway drug there is, which the marijuana got me into smoking cigarettes because I was getting high off the weed. And I remember someone saying to me, we were at a church parking lot skateboarding, and I must have been around 16, 17 years old. Someone said, "Hey, did you know if you smoke a cigarette after you smoke a joint, you get even higher?" And I was like, "Oh, fuck. All right, let's try that." So I started smoking. The first cigarette I ever smoked, I turned green. I was laying down in my friend's white station wagon in the church parking lot, and felt like the world was ending, and I was throwing up like crazy, and I'm like, I'll never have a smoke again. Like 3-4 hours later, I was having a smoke. So, and then then it became a alcohol addiction, a smoking addiction. Pot wasn't really an addiction at all. It was just something, whatever, do every once in a while. And then from pot, you try oil, you try hash. Oh, let's try mushrooms. So you got into mushrooms. Once you started mushrooms, it was, let's try acid. And I was going to raves. So I was doing mushrooms and acid at raves. And then I went on a few bad trips. like some real bad trips. So then I was like, I don't like these drugs anymore. So I got into ecstasy, and I loved ecstasy. Ecstasy was my favorite drug. And then I started trying GHB, and then I got into cocaine. And then once I hit cocaine level, fuck everything else, man. It was cocaine, 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 cocaine. And if I couldn't get cocaine, it was crack. You know, I mean, we could get into all that if I don't know how you want this story to play out, but basically that was my progression was, you know, coke, then crack, then meth, then back to coke, and then all coke and booze. And that was my journey.
Pretty familiar journey, right? So for timeline purposes, I mean, when does that, when do you move from say psychedelics and stuff? You know, when do you get into coke, right? Let's put it that way.
Coke was around.
That's kind of the next level shit there, right? You know, so
okay. So I moved to Ireland. I basically ripped off a HA son, like the son of a HA guy. I ripped him off, and then he threatened to kill me and all this shit. So I ended up moving to Ireland because they were literally hunting me down, these guys. So moved to Ireland, worked there for a while. After about 7-8 months, I got homesick, came back home. I started bartending for my parents. They owned they bought a Chinese restaurant, turned it into an Irish pub. So I took a bartending course, started bartending for them. Well, then now that I've been back into Airdrie, things had changed a bit. Like I had gained some more confidence and stuff like that, and I was fighting. And so there's this drug dealer in Airdrie who the guy who worked for him got arrested or something. So I took over. I went to him and said, hey, like, I'm a tough guy. I can stand up for myself. Like I want to do this. As long as I have your protection, you know what I mean? Like, you know, certain things. So I started selling the coke, but I never did the coke.
Yeah.
And it was about a year of selling coke. So I'd say around 21, 22 is when I did my first rail. And I was like, so I was with all these people in Calgary, did my first rail. And I guess I was talking nonstop talking. I even remember it, right? But at the time, I'm like, I'm not even fucking high. I'm not high. Why do you guys like cocaine, man? Like, this is like, hey, by the way, we should go do that. Blah, blah, blah. Just nonstop. And so people were like, you don't think you're high, bro? You're high. You won't stop talking. So I was like, oh, okay. Like, so then I kind of liked the social aspect. It made me feel comfortable enough to just talk in front of people. It made me feel normal. It made me feel like this is who I'm supposed to be, really. So cocaine and booze, man. Took over. It was cocaine and booze.
There you go. So okay. So how old are you when that kind of? Well, how do you move from that to recovery? What's do you got a rock bottom? What happens there? Right?
Well, so what happened was I was doing the coke, and then like one day we couldn't get coke, and there's this guy I hung out with who I knew sold crack, and he was like, "Well, I can get you guys some crack." So he got us a ball of that. We smoked that. Got. You know, it was way weirder high than coke, but like very, very, you know, I want more. Intense. We actually ended up calling crack more. That was the nickname we called it. Was, I want some more. I want some more. Yeah. So we called it more. I want more. So I did that for 6 months, and literally after about 6 months, any hoot I took, I got violently ill. Just immediately rejected from my body, throwing it up like crazy, and then I would do another hoot. Throwing it up like crazy, do another hoot. So I've like, this doesn't work for me. I can't smoke it anymore. So I just stopped. And then I got into meth because I was selling. This guy from Vancouver asked me if I'd sell some meth at some raves for him. So I said, sure. So I sold it here and there, but all the ravers at the time weren't into jib, as we called it. So I actually was losing friends because they didn't want me selling that shit at raves. So then I owed all this guy this money for it, and I couldn't find anyone to buy it. So I'm like, well, I'll try it. So I got into jib. I ended up smoking all the jib, and I became his best customer. And I was the only one buying jib off of him, exception of a few of my friends, like 3 or 4 of us. And then so I literally did that for 6 months, and I ended up staying up for 11 days, no sleep or no food, and I was like sleep deprivation, chemical psychosis. I remember going to my girlfriend's apartment at the time, and I ended up passing out on the front step of that, and that was around the 6-month mark. And when I came to, and like I was in the hospital, got my stomach pumped and all this, I just quit. So I was done with that, and then I got right back into the cocaine. So I'll just skip ahead from like the age of like, I'd say around 29 to 34 were the last 5 years of my addiction of cocaine and booze. And for those 5 years, most of those 5 years, I would stay up anywhere from 4 to 6 days in a row with no sleep.
Scary, eh?
No sleep, no food, just beer, rye, what any liquor I can get my hands on, really, but mostly beer and rye, and cocaine. So I would do that for four to 6 days, and we had like a different bar to go to every night. Me and this other coke dealer, we didn't sell for the same guy. We just kind of decided we'd team up instead of rather war against each other, and we all had our own customers. But if I ran out, he'd help me out. If he ran out, I'd help him out. Blah blah blah. So we all made money. But like, so we go to this bar on a Wednesday night because drink specials. And we have, go back to my house, do coke all night, have half the bar come back with us, then get up. Everyone leaves or some people stay. We wait for the liquor store to open. And then, then Thursday night, there's the drink specials at this bar. Let's go to this bar. And I worked as a bouncer. So I'd be selling coke out of the bar. And then I'd invite the bar back to my house. I'd even give out free grams of coke because I knew they'd be coming to my house later and wanting to buy more. So then, this was like 5 years of this. And I was ODing, ending up in the hospital just from, worn out. So I would 4 to 6 days of that, and then I'd be hungover for a day or two, and then I'd get up and do it all over again, right? So around when I was 30, I told my sister and some of my friends, I said, when I turn 30, I'm going to quit. I said, that'll be my quitting point. Well, that didn't happen. I went 4 more years of staying up 4 to 6 days in a row. I call it the deepest, darkest days of my addiction were those 5 years. And like, suicide attempts, I had several suicide attempts by mostly just taking massive amounts of drugs, which I guess I just have a high tolerance because nothing ever happened to me, thankfully, like truly, truly thankfully. I even did some really sketchy stuff where trying to jump, like, I won't get into all that stuff, but it was just suicidal tendencies, thoughts, some attempts.
Dark times,
and,
right?
I lost friends to suicides. I lost friends to drinking and driving. I drank and drive all the time, man. High on coke, and I'd be like, I'm fine. I'm on coke. I'm great. But like, there was times where I had no coke and I was drinking, and next thing you know, I woke up in a ditch in my car. Like, how did I get here? Like, I don't even know how I got here. And some guy drives by and rolls down his window. I'm like, hey, sir, can you help me get my car out? He's like, you almost fucking killed me, man. Like, I got kids in the car, and I'm like, holy shit. Like, I don't even know. Yeah. So like, all these bad things were happening in my mental health, my physical health. I was wasting away. So I just said, I need to quit. And it was September 4th, 2014. I overdosed. I went to the hospital, and then I was there for a few hours. They said, you're fine. They gave me a handful of Ativan to take home and said, these will take the edge off. And I was like, sweet. Popped all those, went to the liquor store, grabbed some booze and beer, went back to my house, had a big bag of coke, started doing all that, like trying to overdose, like just by consuming it all at once. And then it was about 7:30 in the morning. I was supposed to go to work. There's an overpass across my street. I was like, I'm gonna go fucking jump, man. I can't go to work like this. And I was a mechanic, so I felt like I had to test drive vehicles and shit. I'm like, I'm gonna kill somebody. I'm gonna go kill myself. So I went to walk out the door, and as I did, I had this like thought, you don't want to die, man. Call the cops. So I called the cops on myself, talked to the operator, and was like, hey, I was breaking down crying. I'm going to kill myself. I need help. I'm a drug dealer. My name is Mike Loughman. Told her all about me and said, I need help right now. I just want out of the game. I'm done. Because I've been selling drugs now for about 14, 15 years. And so boom, about within half an hour, cops came. There was a big blizzard outside. I opened up the door crying. The one cop stayed back by the car. The other older cop walked up and he said, "What the fuck do you want, Loughman?" That's what some people call me, Loughman, just because of Canadian pronouncing. So he says, "What the fuck do you want, Loughman?" He's like, "Walk your ass to the hospital yourself." He's like, "We're dealing with accidents out here, and you're calling us because blah, 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 blah." Well, the ambulance driver, an Indigenous woman, she like said, "How dare you talk to him like that? He wants help. Fucking leave him alone. Come here, honey." And like puts her arm around me and walks me to the ambulance. She's like, "You're doing a big step right now. I want you to be proud of yourself. Let's get so."
Hey guys, well, I got my denture in from dentkits.com, and I gotta tell you, for the first time in 3 years, I'm looking in the mirror, and I'm not reliving the trauma. I'm not feeling terrible about myself. I like my smile. It's so awesome. Anyway, hey, they are way less expensive than traditional dentures. No matter what your situation is, whether you're missing one tooth or a whole mouthful, dentkits.com has an affordable solution for you. Check them out, guys. I am so proud to be an ambassador for this product. Now that I have my smile fixed, you can look forward to some video episodes of Ash's Sauce. Thanks for listening. Now, back to the show.
She says to me, "Can I pray for you?" So I said, "I'm not religious, but go ahead." So she prayed for me while we were in the ambulance, and then she told me a story about how her family lived on a reserve and how they're all addicts or have addictions. And she says she's the only one who doesn't. So she's like, "If I can do it, you can do it." Because she's like, "I came from this place where it was just drugs and poverty and, you know, all this." So she's like, "I believe in you because you made you reached out for help." So then when I got to triage, Peter Lougheed, there was a nurse there that immediately kind of took her role. She's like, "Oh, sweetie," she was an elderly lady. I don't know. Yeah, she was definitely a senior. And she was like super nice. And then she asked if she could pray for me. And I said, sure. She left the room and I could hear her praying. And I was just like, this is weird. This is weird. It's nice, but it's just weird. I just couldn't understand how these people were caring about me so much. Because I was like, I'm a drug addict. I'm a drug dealer. I'm not a good person, you know, like I do, you know. So I didn't think I deserved this help, but they gave it to me. And so then that nurse, after being there for a few hours, they put me up into the short-term mental health unit. Got up in there. It was kind of a scary place, but I was eager and I was excited. And the psychiatrist there, you know, I had to go talk to him and I was telling him what was going on. And I told him I really wanted help. So he says, as long as you're here and you're willing to do the work we give you and, like, you know, you obey the rules and stuff, he's like, we'll help you. So I did whatever they asked. I did whatever paperwork they gave me. And then I heard this guy talking about a recovery center called Action North Recovery Center up in High Level. And he was talking about how it's an Indigenous recovery center. They do like a sweat lodge. They do medicine wheel and smudging and all that kind of stuff. And I just like piqued my interest real quick for a few reasons. Number one, it was so far away. It was up High Level, 10 hours away. So I'm like, if I go there, I can't go out in the middle of the night and find drugs because I don't know anybody and I can't run home. So that was appealed to me. Also, the Indigenous aspect of it, once again, for a few reasons. I've always respected the Indigenous lifestyle. And when I say that, I mean their history, their traditions, and, you know, how they lived off the land, like all that kind of stuff. And then plus the Indigenous EMT who I just met. And so I just kind of felt like it was meant to be. So I'm like, I want to go there. Yeah. So I told them, and they said, okay, we'll get you in there. They worked and worked. They helped me do all the paperwork. So I ended up staying 7 days in the short-term mental health unit, which they always release you after 5 days or they transfer you to somewhere else. But they kept me there for 7 days because they said I was showing so much initiative and motivation to get sober. So they wanted to help me. So then they got Alberta Works involved. It took 2 weeks, though. There was a 2-week waiting period for me to get into their treatment center, which is where I fucked up again. So they said, okay, we'll get you in. They had everything set up. Alberta Works started giving me money. It was like $741 a month just to help me with bills or whatever. And then they also paid for me to get the transportation up to high level and also pay for the recovery center itself. Now, to those 2 weeks, this is a crazy story. So after I lasted like 2-3 days on my own of trying to stay sober. So I'd been sober, I think 10 days at that point. And then I told my friends, I'm like, hey, I'm going to a treatment center. So I kind of skipped over some stuff, but we can maybe jump back to that. It was kind of how I ended up. I'll just jump back. So I was working at a car dealership, and they knew about my drug problem, and I told them I was going to quit drug dealing if they hired me. And in my interview, like, this is how I got my job. I told them I was a drug dealer. I needed a job. I wanted to quit. I did have an alcohol and drug problem, but I was getting help for it. I told him I had it under control, though, which I didn't. And the guy that did the interview and one of the other women, the woman, I knew her husband. Like, me and him did drugs together and, like, you know, got escorts together and all this kind of stuff. So, like, you know, she knew me. And the guy who interviewed me said, you know, I like you. I like your charisma. He's like, I had a drug problem and I got a job here and it changed my life. I want to support you. So, boom, they gave me the job. Yeah. So then I told all my friends I was going to quit drug dealing. So I still was drug dealing a little bit, but not as much as I was. But then I ended up getting $40,000 in the hole because I wasn't selling drugs. I was doing most of what I was picking up. Right. So plus a lot of my friends didn't want to hang out with me if I wasn't selling drugs. Yeah. So then after this whole like incident of me going to the hospital and stuff, that's when I was working at the dealership. Yep. So then I got into the hospital and all this. So in that 2-week period I was telling you about, I called some of my friends who I really wasn't talking to anymore, and I called a few that I still was, and I said, hey, I just got out of the hospital. I'm going to rehab, but here's the thing. I really want to get high with you guys one last time for a few days anyways. And so my one friend said, no, I don't want to get you drugs because I want you to get help. And then I told him that the psychiatrist told me to do drugs one more time. And he was like, what? And I said, yeah, he says, I made up this story, dude. I was like, my psychiatrist said that they were all going to college and stuff and they were all doing cocaine and then they got their jobs. So they said, let's do cocaine one last time before we like go off into the real world. So he suggested I try and do the same thing with my friends to say goodbye to the drugs before I go to treatment. So my friend's like, well, if that's what he told you, let's do it. So he ended up getting me some drugs. And so we all got together and I got high for like 5 or 6 days. And in those 5 or 6 days, I pretty much, not like a full blown overdose, but like I ended up in the hospital again. And then so with 3 days before I had to go to treatment, they told me I had to be 7 days sober. So 3 days before I went to treatment, I sobered up and got on the bus. I got up there, went to treatment, and experienced the best 28 days of my life. There were some bad ups and downs there, but that treatment center was friggin' amazing. They stayed open about 4 years after I left, but they've gone out of business since, which is really unfortunate. But so then, 28 days there. I begged to stay, but Alberta Works wouldn't pay for me to stay any longer, so I had to come out. And I told them, I said, I really want to stay. I really want to stay. They're like, Mike, you can do it. You can do it. You've worked on so much while you're here. You've worked through some things that, you never talked about before. We have faith in you. So I got out. I've been sober ever since.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. So you're not a 12-stepper? Do I get that part right?
Well, I did 90 meetings in 90 days when I got out of treatment because we had to do AA in treatment. We had to do AA and NA in treatment. And then when I got out, it was suggested I do 90 meetings in 90 days, which I did. And I really liked a lot of the parts of AA, but where I come from, there was so much friggin' politics, man. Like one time, I had a woman accuse me of 13-stepping because this one woman called me. She's like, I've tried all my female sponsors. You're the only male that I know in AA. Would you meet with me to talk? I really need someone to talk to right now. And she's like, there's an AA meeting in a couple hours. We can meet at Paul's. We can have a piece of pizza and some water or pop and then go to the meeting. And I said, sure. So we met up. We sat there. I talked to her for like an hour, hour and a half. And then I said, okay, we got to go to the meeting. So she said, thank you for talking. I feel so comfortable with you. She's like, she said she was pretty pissed off at her feet because she got a hold of a couple of her sponsors, but they said they were too busy or told her to figure it out herself. Yep. So we walk in together and the whole room, eyes were on us, glaring, giving us this fucking evil glare. I'm like, what the hell? I didn't know this whole 13 stepping thing. I didn't even know what that was yet. Yeah. So I sit down, and then this guy comes up to me. We need to talk outside now. And then a woman went up to the girl and said, we need to talk outside now. So they both kind of took us aside, and then I was getting poked in the chest. You shouldn't be out with no women in AA and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, dude, she called me for help. I'm not going to turn someone away just because they're a female. I sat down and talked with her, and we came here. Oh, what's your intentions? And I said, I have no fucking intentions, man. And then he goes, this is what you have to do. This is what AA is all about. He goes, first, you pray to your higher power and ask your higher power, is this the right choice? Am I making the right choice? And if your higher power doesn't answer or your higher power tells you the wrong thing, then you call your sponsor. And if your sponsor will tell you that you shouldn't go out with that woman. And I'm like, dude, man, you're some guy I don't know. I don't know you. I don't know what kind of person you are outside of here. Why should I take fucking advice from you? I said, I listened to my inner being that said, help this woman. So I went with this woman. I have no intentions of sleeping with her. I don't find her attractive. I think she's a nice person. I wanted to help. That's it. So then it became like this whole thing that anytime I went in there was half the people were like whatever, and the other half were cool. Then another time, this one guy said to me, you don't come to enough meetings, find a different home group. And this woman stood up and said, how dare you? He can come to as many meetings as he wants. He doesn't have to come to a meeting if he doesn't want to. He's like, well, when you don't need a meeting, that's when you need a meeting the most. And I'm like, fuck, dude, I can't make every meeting. I can't, I'm getting sick of the politics and the cliques in this group. And so then the thing that topped it off was I was 6 months sober at this time. I went into the radio station. I always wanted a job as on the radio or a news anchor or something like that, or like an interviewer. So I went into this radio station, Air 106.1 in Airdrie, walked up to the desk, and I said, hey, my name's Mike. I got a face for radio. Can I get a job? And I was
It's one of my standby jokes.
Right? Yeah.
Mom always told me I had a face for radio, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I got that. My sister's boyfriend at the time was in a band called Face for Radio. I got it from that. And I just was joking, and then I hear this guy laughing from an office. He goes, who is that? Send him in here. So I went in, we talked, told him I wanted a job, and he goes, well, do you have any training or schooling or anything? I said no, and he's like, well, unfortunately I can't give you a job, you need schooling. But he's like, so I kind of told him a bit about me, like with the addictions and how I'm sober and newly sober. And he's like, can I do an interview with you, like on the air? Would that be something you're in for? And I said, sure. So we did like three. Yeah. So we did a huge interview. Like it was like 2 or 3 1-hour-long interviews, which he broke up into segments and did over a few days or something like that. Yeah. And so, but before I did that interview, when I got out of recovery, I went back to that job I was telling you about at the car dealership that said I could go to recovery. Or when I got out, the people that supported me were not there anymore. It was different people.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So the whole attitude towards me shifted, and I was a druggie, a troublemaker. I just screwed them over because I went off to recovery and they had to fill my shift, and now I get my job back and it's unfair and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So they treated me like shit. They didn't give me the same job that I had. They basically had me doing hardcore physical work, which I couldn't do because of my knees. So I was getting called all the names and stuff. So I went up to HR and I complained, and she said, "There's nothing I can do." And I'm like, people are calling me addict and druggie and junkie and everything, and there's nothing you can do. Like, this is like got to be against some sort of company policy for people to be calling me these names. And I'm like, and how did they even find out? Like, how did these people know? So then I went to my boss and I said, I'm having issues, blah, 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 blah. And I said, if they don't change, I'm going to sue. Because I'm like, I think like you're either trying to constructively get me to quit, or you're going to do something, like make me do something so I get fired. But I said, I don't want to do that. And I said, here's the thing. I was asked to go on the air and do an interview about my life. And I want to do that. And I was going to thank you guys for supporting me to go to recovery and, saving me a job for when I got out. But now you're treating me like this. And he's like, you're going to go on the air and talk about your drug problems? And I said, I don't have drug problems anymore. I said, I did. I'm 6 months sober. I said, I want to go on and talk about my life to try and help other people. And then he said, that can only bring bad stuff. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, people will judge you. People will hate you. It'll ruin your career. It'll ruin your reputation. And I said, no. You're not the kind of people I want to work for. I quit, and I'll see you in court. Fuck off. See you later. Walked out, and I sued them. I'm not allowed to talk about what happened, but I stood up for myself, for other people in recovery, to set an example, and it worked out for the best. And I went on air. I did the interview, and boom, man. Doors opened up all over the place. It was nothing but positivity. I started doing fundraising. Yeah. I started getting into doing talks in schools to kids about drugs and alcohol and bullying and suicide and mental health. So like that interview that my boss, who's like a friggin' millionaire or billionaire, I think, like who thinks he knows the best and he's super smart, said only bad things can happen. And I knew he was wrong, and I did what I did. And only good things have happened ever since.
Well, that's. I mean, it's not surprising, I guess, to somebody that knows better, I suppose, right? And that's just the stigma, Mike. That's what that is, and it's unfortunately, right. It's still a thing. I mean, it's not as bad as it used to be, and stopping that stigma is a big part of what we're trying to do here on the show, anyway, right? And it sounds like
that's one of the things. It's one of the things I'm really big about is changing the stigmas associated with alcohol and drugs and mental health and stuff, because one of the biggest things, a junkie will never change, and they'll never change. They'll always once a drug dealer, always a drug dealer. Once a whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I am living proof that people can turn around, and there's many, many more people like me that are living examples that have gone from doing some of the worst possible things a human can do to opening their eyes and getting sober, and then becoming some of the best people on the planet.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. It wasn't that long ago that I was doing a lot of the worst things a human can do, right? So I can totally appreciate what you're saying there. So let's talk more about this fundraising and the group that I kind of came into contact you with, and what's going on with all that now, Mike. The group is Sober Friends?
Yeah, the Sober Friends Society.
The Sober Friends Society. Okay,
yeah. When I was in the treatment center, I liked it so much. We did sweat lodging. We did craft night on Wednesday nights. We did karaoke on Thursday nights. We did movies on Friday nights. We went for walks every morning. I loved it. I loved it so much. So I said to myself when I was in there, I said, I'm going to get sober. I'm going to be one of those people I've seen on TV that talks in schools. I'm going to be one of those people that helps other people get sober. I'm going to do great things. And then I had this dream that I opened up, not a recovery center, but a retreat. It was like a retreat for people to go to that had addictions and were doing good in life, but every once in a while they needed to get away and escape to like a safe, sober space with like-minded people with a structured system of crafts and board games and movies and things like that, kind of like how I got this recovery center. But I wasn't going to have it like, it was just going to kind of be me at a building with all this fun stuff, and this is where people could come. So that was my dream. So when I got out, I actually sold my house that I sold drugs out of. I had $50,000 set aside, and I was actually traveling all over Alberta looking for land I could buy, like put a $50,000 down payment on. And, you know, I just could not find anything that was the right fit or close enough to Airdrie or had wells or power poles or anything. So it would have taken hundreds of thousands of dollars of, you know, money. So I just decided to invest my money in me, and I started a business called Surrender to Sobriety. And that was basically, I made T-shirts and hats and stickers and dog tags, designed a whole bunch of those. And then my goal was to help people get sober. So I got a website made up, you know, I did all this stuff, but I guess I didn't put a lot of thought into it. And I guess I'm just not that good of a businessman, because even though people wanted to pay me for my services, I didn't have the heart to take their money. Because someone would call me at 3 a.m, I'm going to kill myself, I need help. I would drop, you know, get out of bed, go to where they're at, and talk with them, make sure they were safe, make sure they weren't going to kill themselves. And then I would, like, if they were in danger, I would call the ambulance and I would have them come. If I felt they were fine, I left it alone. I'd show up at people's houses that were doing drugs that asked me, you know, come take their drugs away. And then they'd offer me drugs while I'm there. I was like, are you kidding me? You called me to get, so no. So I'd take their drugs away, flush them down the toilet. So I was doing that. And like, people would call me, say, you know, I'd go meet with them for coffee. I'd spend hours with people, and people would be like, here's $100. I'm like, no, I don't want to take your money right now. Just pay me later. I just wanted to get you help. So I ended up going, like, in the, you know, I went in the hole several thousand, tens of thousands of dollars actually over a few years, because I wasn't taking money from anyone, and I was still, you know, paying rent and bills and gas and everything. So once I realized I was in the hole, and I was doing my accounting, and I went to the city of Airdrie to ask them for support, and the guy that was in charge of business or whatever in Airdrie said, you know what, Mike, I don't think you have the heart for being a cutthroat businessman. I think you should start a not-for-profit. You know, and I'm like, that's kind of a good idea. So I went with that. And then I turned the Surrender to Sobriety business into the Sober Friends Society. And I just started helping people for free. Like, I still don't get any money out of doing this. I don't even get, like, money for gas or anything. But at least I'm not going in the hole, because a lot of the money, like the sober events we do, that gets paid for out of, like, the money we raised. So paint night, for example. So we do sober activities. Once a month, we'll do a paint night. So I'll have an artist come in, and usually someone in recovery, mostly someone in recovery, and they'll guide us through a painting for 3 or 4 hours. So we'll order pizza and pop, because I want to make sure if people aren't eating at home, at least they have some pizza and something to drink. I mean, it's not the best food, but it's still, you're getting something in them. So we get pizza and pop. We sit around, we talk about whatever pops up. You know, sometimes stuff about addictions does pop up. Sometimes we tell kind of old funny stories about, you know, dumb shit that we did or whatever happened, or like stuff, why you shouldn't do this, or we recommend stuff to other people or whatever. So the sober groups are awesome. I give people a safe, sober space, which is what I've always wanted to do with the retreat I was talking about. So on a Saturday night, you know, you can come down and paint, be creative, learn to go with the flow. Not everything has to be perfect, because that was a big part of the art part of it. For me, when I first started doing the paint nights, I was always getting frustrated, mad. Oh, this is an ugly painting, blah, 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 blah. And the artist just kept telling me, Mike, you know, like, art is different to everybody. It's not going to be perfect, you know, this and that and this. So now I just paint and I have fun, and I don't even think about it. And I've seen other people progress the same way as I have. And I also know people that come to our groups because they isolate. I'm one of those people, but I have other people in the group that the only times they usually come out are to come to our group, and it's because they feel safe and they know that, you know, there's no judgment, and that they need to get out of the house. So I've seen people grow in that aspect as well. The other thing we do is, like I said, I'll sober coach people. Our long-term goal is to build a clubhouse. So that's where the retreat idea I have come in, except it would be kind of more like there'd be couches and TVs and a pool table, and we'd do like big board games. So kind of like my retreat. However, I want it to be localized in Airdrie or around it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to become the central hub of sobriety for Airdrie, where we'd have a room that we would not rent out. Because, like AA and NA and CA, they have to pay for places or get them donated by churches or whatever. I want to have 1 or 2 rooms that any group can use for free. And I know that goes against the AA, NA traditions, but the way around that is, okay, give us $5 a week. You can have the room. You know what I mean? So they're still paying something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so then there would be AA, NA, Smart Recovery, and then there could be so many meetings in a day for these rooms every day of the week at no charge. And then we would have addiction counselors on site. And I'd like it to be a 24/7 kind of facility down the road. But, start small, see what we can do. We don't have a building or anything just yet. We have to raise tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars to do those kinds of things or get land donated. And so far, no luck in that aspect. But one day, so that's the Sober Friends Society. I do talks in schools and stuff about addictions, mental health. We do, I also do stand-up comedy about addictions, mental health, eating healthy, online dating, some of the whatever.
You know what? I got to interrupt you there. So a segment that we were doing, and maybe there's an opportunity. I probably shouldn't even be talking about this on air, but why not? Right? Whatever. It's a frank kind of podcast here, right?
And now for a quick PSA brought to you by Revolution Recovery, helping men recover and become their best selves through support and treatment. They've been there and they understand.
Hi listeners, this is Lena. I'm part of the Ashes to Awesome team and co-hosted on episodes 76 and 67. Do you carry Narcan, also known as naloxone? If not, perhaps you should. The kits are not only compact and easy to use, they are free at all harm reduction centers and a lot of pharmacies. By carrying one of these kits, you could save the life of somebody who loves and that is loved. I get that most of you never plan on being around opioid use, but there's no telling when it could be around you. I can't think of a good reason not to have it, and if you're not sure where to find it for free, send us an email at ashestowesomepodcast@gmail.com. Legwork for you and find it for free in your area. Thanks for listening, and now back to the show.
So we used to have Just the Tips Thursday, which has just stopped. Just the Tips Thursday, tips is plural, but and what we were doing, and you're going to love this, we would take tips generated by ChatGPT on living in sobriety, and kind of read those. My buddy Scott from the No New Friends podcast, who since he doesn't have time now, but he was coming on. He'd read them to me, and we'd have some fun with them. And oh man, we were having a lot of fun with those. Like it's some of our just the most hilarious content came out of that. So I think there's maybe an opportunity for you and I to jam some more here and kind of relook at those episodes. Again, like I told you at the beginning of the show or before we started recording, the format's changing, so we're not going to do Thursdays on Thursday anymore, Mondays on Monday, but certainly that's something we can talk about because
I'm down for that.
It's funny, the humor thing, right? It's Scott, who is I call him a muggle, right? So all the people that aren't a part of the drug world or have never been around it or whatever, and I call them all muggles, from the Harry Potter reference, right?
Yeah.
And he's the mugglest of the muggle, right? The guy has ice cream socials and golf cart parades in his neighborhood down in Florida there. So he's always concerned about offending people, right? That whether they're people that have suffered an addiction or their family members or whatever. And I'm constantly saying to him, you don't get it, man. Our baseline has moved. When you've dealt with some of the shit that we have dealt with, after some extended period of time in active addiction, some of the things that happen, some of the things we do, some of the things that happen to us, you can't really offend anymore, right? So it's like that baseline is different than normal people, than muggles, if you will, right?
Right.
Right. So I love the humor that that we can find in some things now, right? So
yeah, humor heals, man. Humor heals, and as long as you're smart about it, and you're not, you got to be. You can swear, you can say some things, cross the line. You got to just know where that line is, which is kind of tricky.
Sometimes I
can be
push
tricky.
it, right? Know your audience. That's what
you
I
can
say,
push
right?
it. Yeah. Know your audience. Know your audience.
Right. Yeah.
So I got into doing the stand-up comedy through PMAS and Aero Comedy Training because they knew about my public speaking. They were actually, PMAS was the one who helped me get into schools to do public speaking. So they said, hey, we're going to do a fundraiser where we take a comedian, Derek Wilkins, his name, and we do a workshop with you, and he helps you like guides you through creating your own jokes. So then you do this 3-day workshop, and then you go up on stage, you sell tickets, and you get up on stage and you do your routine. So they get about 10, 20 people together, and we do that. So I've done that 4 times now, and I absolutely loved it. So we're going to actually do one for the Sober Friends Society. I do open mic and spoken word and rap about addictions and mental health. I got a few really great pieces that I'm very, very proud of.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did you want to hear like some of the reasons why I did get into drugs and alcohol?
Yeah, I mean, most certainly, right? That's all part of the story. I usually would cover that earlier, right? But
I kind of jumped over parts of that.
Well, and I thought there's so much to carry. There's so much to talk about with your work, right? So I didn't want to take the whole episode talking about some of that.
Yeah.
When we really wanted to cover certain work. So you know what? Why don't we put that on pause for now? Because we're not done with each other, Mike. We're certainly not done. I can tell you right now. You know, you're in the same community as me, essentially, right? I mean, I'm in South Calgary, so I might as well be in,
we're close enough.
Vegas or something. You know, I'm so fucking Calgary. I was gone for 15 years in Saskatchewan. I came back and it was like, holy shit, what happened in Calgary? It's gotten huge, true. Right? But anyway, what I do want to talk about in this particular interview is, of course, your upcoming fundraisers. But I also want to talk about smart recovery. If we could talk about that for a little bit.
Sure.
I'll be honest with you. I've heard the term a lot lately. I'm not even really sure what it is. So you kind of break that down for us and give us an idea what's going on there.
Sure. Well, remember how I was saying I did 90 meetings in 90 days of AA, and then I had some negative things happen to me there. While I was going there, I met a guy that was going to Smart Recovery, and he said, hey, why don't you come to Smart Recovery and give me that a try? And I said, hey, what's that? He's like, it stands for Self-Management and Recovery Training. No higher power. He says it's only science-based. And I said, that appeals to me because even though I was going to AA, still didn't believe in the whole higher power. I was spiritual, but like the whole having to say God or higher power things, what didn't appeal to me. I felt like I can do this on my own. I don't need that to help me. I'm here on planet Earth. It's me and me alone. I have to do it. It's within my power to do so. And that's actually one of the things of Smart Recovery is the responsibility and power is in you to do so. So we believe that it's within your control to do these things. So it's cognitive behavioral therapy techniques. So things like cost-benefit analysis, playing the tape forward, which is my favorite tool ever. So it used to take me a while to do it, but now it just goes by fast. So like if you're sitting there and I ran into a buddy, hadn't seen him in 2 years, doesn't know I'm sober. Hey, man, fuck, I haven't seen you in 3-4 years. Let's go for a beer. Actually, I can't. I am sober now. Oh, what's one drink, man? Like, we haven't seen each other in 3 years. Just one drink for old time's sake. And then, you sit there and you go, maybe I can just have one. You know what? Wait a minute. If I have one, I'm going to want 6. If I have 6, I'm going to want a gram of Coke. If I have a gram of Coke, I'm going to want a 2-4 of beer. Then we're going to get an 8-ball of Coke. We're going to go back to my house. We're going to have more Coke and booze delivered. We're going to end up having people come over. I'm going to get into a fist fight. Cops are going to come. I'm going to take a swing at a cop. I'm going to end up in a cop car. I'm going to lose my job, and I'm going to go to jail. So that's what stops me every time from picking up. But there's other tools like hierarchy of values. There's a bunch of, you can like Google them, and there's a Smart Recovery handbook and stuff. You can come to a Smart Recovery meeting, but I just love Smart Recovery mostly for the when I went to AA, I liked being around the people. You know what I mean? So that's where Smart Recovery comes in, and I like being able to get stuff off my chest. So when I went to AA, sometimes you couldn't talk. They wouldn't let you talk. Like, they would skip over you, or like they would only want you to talk about a specific thing when you wanted to really talk about what just happened to you. Like, oh my God, and just get that out. Right. And they wouldn't let you do that. At least our group wouldn't let you do that. So at Smart Recovery, they do a check-in where at the beginning they say a few things, and then they say, so now we'll start with the check-in, we'll finish off with a tool. So check-in is we just go around the room and you talk about your successes or troubles over the last week, what went wrong, any advice, we offer each other tidbits here and there. Like there is some crosstalk, whereas in AA there is absolutely no crosstalk. But as we're talking, if someone says something, oh, hey, that you speaking about that reminds me of something. Here's what I did in your situation. Maybe you could give that a try. And then people will kind of spitball some ideas and say, oh, I tried that too. And then the person's like, oh, thank you for telling me that. And then they'll go on and talk and finish. And then once everyone talks, if anyone still needs to speak, we'll let them speak. And then we do a tool. So then I did Smart Recovery for a couple of years. And then I decided to become a facilitator. So I took the facilitator course. And now I actually just as a few days ago decided to take a 2-3 month break from Smart Recovery facilitating while I focus on my vacation and my upcoming fundraiser. So yeah, that's what Smart Recovery is all about. Okay.
Now, I do not want a 12-step bash. It's not something we do here on the show. Any and all methods of recovery are absolutely welcome. Whatever works for you is the exact right way in my mind. Right?
Yeah, that's another part of Smart Recovery. We believe that you work your own program, which is like another thing that they say in AA. And we believe that whatever works for you, works for you. So if you're someone who needs to take Suboxone or methadone or whatever, I'm not too experienced with that stuff. But, some people would say, well, you're not sober if you're on that. We're like, you know what? It's harm reduction. As long as you're not doing your drugs and choices, and your life is manageable. So you're paying your bills. You're going to work. You're not a shitty person. You're not abusing people. You're not stealing. As long as you're doing that, then fine. If that's what's working for you, works for you. If you want to do AANACA every day, do it. If you're sober, do it. If you want to do both of them, Smart Recovery AA, do it. Like, if you're someone who needs to use medicinal marijuana, and, as long as you're, like I said, your life is manageable, and, if you're someone, though, I would have no respect for this. If you use medicinal marijuana and you come into one of our smart groups smelling like marijuana, I'm not cool with that at all. Just because you could trigger other people. You have a right to do
other people's experience as well.
Yeah, you have a right to do what you have to do your own program. But when you come to a meeting like this, you have to be aware that there are people there that do have marijuana addictions. Like Smart Recovery isn't just for booze and drugs. It's for gamblers. It's for overeaters. It's for any addiction, because we believe all addictions are very similar, and using certain techniques can overcome it, or help you overcome them. So
coping mechanism is a coping mechanism, right? Whether it's gambling or weed or fentanyl or booze, right? Who really cares? I totally agree with that. So I'm definitely going to look more into it. I can't believe you're the first person I've had talk about Smart Recovery. So
I've got the shirt on, Smart Recovery, Airdrie.
Love it. Now let's talk about this upcoming fundraiser. It sounds like you've got a few things, so let's just talk about the one that's closest to us now, and how maybe people can help and go from there.
Okay, cool. The fundraiser that's coming up is called Mike Marches Again for Mental Health.
Okay.
And the reason why it's called that is because I've done this walk before, and I said I would never do it again, but here I am doing it again. However, when I did it the first time, I walked from High Level to Airdrie, and the reason why I walked from High Level is, you might remember, that's where I went to recovery.
Of course.
So it represented my 41 days, 36 days of walking, but 41 days total, because, I chose High Level because that's where I went to recovery. It represented my journey of sobriety, where it started and where I am now, which is Airdrie. So, we went up there. I spent a few days at the recovery center talking to some of the people there, and I did a presentation at Alberta Works, and then we did the walk. And so on the first 3 days, it was pouring rain. And so on the first day, when it was pouring rain, my shoes and socks were getting soaked. So I decided I had a pair of rubber boots. So I just didn't want to get my socks wet. So my idea was I'll wear rubber boots and that's it. Bad fucking idea. I had blisters over a dozen blisters on each foot.
Oh, I'll bet.
And both my big toenails fell off. So I had no big toenails. My feet were swollen and just like wrinkled and everything. So that was after 3 days of walking like that. I just couldn't walk anymore. And I was in between High Level and Manning was like one of the longest walks because it's about an hour and a half drive of nothing, like nothing. So this walk seemed like forever, number one. But there was, so about halfway, there's this woman's house. And she knew one of the counselors of the recovery center. So she heard about our story, and then she offered us to stay at her house for a few days. So we stayed at her house. We actually saw a bear. A bear came right up on our yard. Thankfully, we had we were walking with bear spray because we knew we were in bear country. But anyways, she fed us. I got a shower there, watched TV. We stayed there for a few days, and then after, I think it was 3 days. So 3 days of walking and then a 3-day rest, which wasn't the best progress to start my walk. But after 3 days, I started walking again. I think I walked for something like 12, 13, 14 days, took one more day of rest, walked another little while, took another day of rest, and then walked the rest of the way. So 36 days of total walking, 41 days of being away from my house. And I walked 30 to 40 kilometers a day. My record was 43.4 kilometers in one day. I've seen other people do walks and stuff, and they walk 70, 80 kilometers a day because they walk from morning till night. I can't do that. I've got early degenerative arthritis in all of my joints, but my knees are really bad. I've had 3 knee surgeries, and as of when I was 28, 29, somewhere around 30, we'll just say. I was told I needed new knees. Okay. So I'm too young to get new knees. So I decided to walk for a total of 8 hours. And whatever I could walk in those 8 hours, I would stop. Plus, I didn't want to walk at nighttime because I was walking alone on the highway. Yep. So that's why it took me probably a little bit longer than other people. But I raised $11,751 doing that. Wow. It was cool, though. People would stop on the highway. I heard you on the radio. Here's $200. Oh, I heard you on the radio. Here's an ice cream. Here's a pizza. Or here's a rock. Here's a crystal that I felt like you needed to have for your journey. It was the coolest experience ever, man. That people so pulling cool. over. Yeah, people pull over just to hug me and bawl their eyes out and then tell me their story. Or they'd want to hear parts of my story or tell me how inspiring I was. It was a really life-changing experience. So I said anytime I got interviewed, I would never do anything like this again, ever. But I had I don't know, it was about 2 years ago I wanted to do it, but then COVID hit, couldn't do it. And then this year I'm like, you know what? I'm getting older. I'm now 46. So I'm like, I probably got one more left in me. So I'm going to do it one more time, but I'm going to walk from Edmonton to Airdrie because when I was doing all my fundraising and speaking and all of that, I won an award called the Lieutenant Governor True Grit Award, which is my work in mental health and addictions. I was nominated in 2016, and then 2017 I actually won. So I decided to walk from the government house where I received that award, which is in Edmonton. So I'm walking from the government house in Edmonton to Airdrie. And that walk, by the way, I forgot to mention, I was walking with a 5-pound ball and chain around my ankle.
I was going to ask about that because I saw something. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it represented addictions and mental health. And where I got that idea was from a lady. She donated a painting to my fundraiser, and it was a painting of a ball and chain with a happy face on it. I said, what does this mean? She's like, the ball and chain is mental health and addictions. The happy face is because people are always like, well, just smile. Why don't you smile? Oh, okay, I'll just throw a fucking smiley face on my ball and chain and it's gone. So that's where I got the idea for the ball and chain, because it's the stigmas associated with mental health and addictions, right? Which is what we were talking about. So, so this time, walking from Edmonton to Airdrie with a 5-pound ball and chain once again, but this time I'm doing it with another individual. His name is Brody Bennett Aru. Young guy. He reached out to me a few years ago for help. He's gone to some meetings. He's sober. he wants to do this with me. So we'll both be wearing a 5-pound ball and chain. And we have a support driver named Elle Geary. She's a friend of mine, and she's part of our she's part of Smart Recovery, and she's part of the Sober Friends Society. So she's helping us out again. And our goal is $10,000. We'd like to raise way more than that, of course.
Of course. Right.
But the main goal is $10,000, keeping it real.
Yeah.
So that's and we've got our first 5 days of hotels already donated. So we won't have to spend any money on hotels. And we just got a $500 check from Costco for food. So we won't have to, we'll have $500 to buy food along the way. So we still got to get some more hotel donations, some more food donations. And we definitely need more donations or sponsors from businesses or people in general to go towards the overall $10,000 goal.
So, listeners, I appreciate not everybody has a ton of money, but if we'll put in the show notes. We'll have the links to everything here, of course, right? And Mike, I'll get you to make sure you send me that as soon as we're done, with this conversation. But remember, it's not just you. If you work for a company that you think might kick in a few bucks, this is a pretty great cause. And we're talking about somebody who's I don't know how many miles that is. It's got to be, what is that?
Well,
about
the
600
Edmonton,
miles? 700, something like that? 1,000 kilometers? Edmonton. Sorry. Yeah, I still had the other one in my head. Okay.
Yeah, the other one was over 1,021 kilometers.
Yeah, right. So that's a hell of a journey. So, but I mean, we're walking
this
the ball and chain from Edmonton to Airdrie is
but the route from
something like that,
Yeah, the route from Edmonton to Airdrie is longer than you think, because we have to walk from the government house, which is like dead smack in the middle of Edmonton, and we have to walk directly west because we can't walk through Edmonton. So we walk west until we get far enough out of Edmonton where we can start heading south. And so I think it's like a total of 350 or something kilometers. So
that's a lot. That's a lot. So he's not just asking for money for the sake of it. He's doing something, right? He's doing something a hell of a lot more than most of us are doing for anything, right? So if wherever you work, talk to your boss. Talk to there's always a budget for this kind of thing. Maybe they can help out with hotels. Maybe they can help out with some cash. Maybe they can donate something else that helps. But I think it's a fantastic cause. And please, guys, there's enough of you listening now. We'll certainly be able to get something pointed that way.
Thank you.
Now, that said, Mike, I would definitely like to help out as much as I can. I mean, hey, I don't even pay the bills yet with this podcast, right? So there's not much I can do financially. But I got a voice and I got an audience, and most certainly anything I can do to help out. I definitely like to keep up with the journey here. So
perfect.
We'll talk more about that, offline. We are at the hour mark now, and kind of like to keep it around an hour. So, again, though, we're not done talking. We are definitely not done talking, right?
Can I leave your audience? Can I leave your audience with a couple of pieces of things I've heard over the years that I like to tell people?
Oh, absolutely! Please do. Yeah.
Well, some of the things I've picked up along my way of like meetings and stuff. One time I heard a guy say, one of the most loving things you can do for someone is just listen. I just like to lead by example.
Yeah. Well, you're certainly doing that.
I believe that recovering loudly helps other people from suffering silently. So those are two things I live by: lead by example and that. So.
Yeah.
But thanks for the interview. I really appreciate you a lot.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, absolutely. That brings us to my favorite part of the show. That's the Daily Gratitudes. Today's Daily Gratitudes are brought to you by
Doctor Treatment Centers in Phuket, Thailand. They are a clinic run by clinicians, not a business run by businessmen. And they know that where addiction is the smoke, trauma is the fire. Learn more at yatracenters.com. That's YATRACENTRE.com.
All right, when I do have a guest on the show, I like to get them to share with us some daily gratitudes. Do you got a couple or a few you'd like to share? Yeah.
I definitely have a lot of things to be grateful for. I'm grateful for Smart Recovery. Yeah. I'm grateful for my community of Airdrie because they're so supportive. Mm-hmm. I'm grateful for my parents because right now they're giving me a place to live. Otherwise, I'd be on the street with all my animals. I have 3 cats. They're sitting all around me right now, and I have a bunch of fish and turtles and scorpions and spiders and frogs and lizards. So if it wasn't for them, I'd be on the street. I'm moving out in 2025, thankfully. Woohoo! But so I'm grateful for them. I'm grateful for my animals. And I'm grateful for sobriety, man. Like, life is so much better sober. I wouldn't want it any other way.
Right. Well said, man. Well said. It's a true story. So,
No, I'm grateful for people like you doing what you're doing. Like,
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people in my community that do what I do or similar stuff, and without all of them and people like you, there'd be a lot of people suffering and wouldn't have nowhere to go or anyone to talk to or to listen to.
Yeah, right. So, and for the final gratitude, guys, it goes out to you, the listeners. Whatever you're doing, please keep doing it. It's working. Our numbers keep climbing, and for that, I'm very, very grateful. If you're on Spotify, if you're listening on Spotify, you can now watch on Spotify as well as of last week here. If you're listening on any other platform and would like to watch, you can jump onto YouTube. If you're on Apple, please drop a review and a rating. If you're on Spotify, please leave a comment. I do publish all of the comments. Doesn't matter what they say. I do publish them, after the fact when they do come in. And anytime you do these things, you are helping me get a little bit closer to living my best life. My best life is to make a humble living spreading the message, and the message is this. If you are in active addiction right now, today could be the day. Today could be the day that you start that lifelong journey. Reach out to a friend, reach out to a family member, call into detox, go to a meeting, do whatever the hell it is you need to do to get that journey started, because it is so much better than the alternative. And if you are the loved one of somebody who's suffering in addiction right now, just taking the time to listen to our conversation, if you could just take one more minute out of your day and text that person, let them know they're loved. Use the words,
"You are loved."
That little glimmer of hope just might be the thing that brings them back.
Awesome, thank you.
I'm the monster with a mono to drugs and frustration. Created this isolation that others find selfish. Had to cope with some shit that could kill, hit the all switch. Had to do a mind shit to get through the time stretch. Seems like bad days last and the good days fly quick. This monster in my thoughts taunts me till I'm sick. Takes over reality. Can you feel the insanity? Body shaking like my thoughts are causing allergies. Truth from fiction, can't seem to tell the difference. Anyone out there relate to me? My only one tripping. Left wishing I could be the normal one in the room. Anxiety got me twitching, feel a monster in the distance. Gotta get busy, can't let this shit affect me. When no one left to protect, who's gonna protect me? Feels like shit's getting messy. Now that the monster's taking over, I think it's the only one that gets me. Yeah. Met the monster in my storm. Did I let him stay too long? Cause he don't wanna leave till everybody's gone. Pushed away the ones that I need. It's messed up cause inside it's not who I wanna be. Think one thing and do another. React to the emotion that wants me to suffer. Sorry if I smother. I suffocate my relationship like we undercover. Wanna disconnect and run from the suburbs. The old me wants to return, wants me to forget what I learned. Have nowhere to turn with all the bridges burned. Pain is what I know, heart's hard as stone. Feel the shakes in my bones, I'm turning cold. Look at what I did, you had my back from the beginning, but I couldn't see it. I was blinded by my feelings, selfish. I guess me and the monster have a lot of common. Look in the mirror, see the reflection of the problem. Yeah. I'm the monster with a mono to drugs and frustration. Created this isolation that others find selfish. Had to cope with some shit that could kill, hit the all switch. Had to do a mind shit to get through the time stretch. Seems like bad days last and the good days fly quick. This monster in my thoughts taunts me till I'm sick. Takes over reality. Can you feel the insanity? Body shaking like my thoughts are causing allergies. Truth from fiction, can't seem to tell the difference. Anyone decide to rob him? Am I the one trying to drag us to the bottom? When I get suspicious, is it all in my noggin? I guess this monster is morphed into my core. Spent so much time alone, thought I was talking to the walls. Locked in a prison, being haunted by my thoughts. Gotta break out and take out the monster like a boss, yeah.